And moving forward, of course, in Colorado in 2006, the governor, then Bill Owens, signed into law a bill that significantly, at least on paper, restricted the ability of local governments to use eminent domain for blight. Right. And that same year, we also saw an attempt to have a ballot initiative that would have restricted eminent domain, signed by more than 40,000 voters. Unfortunately, not enough to get it on the ballot. But in moving in toward 2010, so this is 4 years later, if you could see something on the ballot, what do you think would be the most effective reform tool that property rights advocates could hope for?
Well, I mean, the pie in the sky, the ideal would be to identify the term public use and to put specific categories underneath of it. It's a very difficult challenge, and there's so many different interpretations of that. That's why we're in the state we are today in terms of eminent domain. But I think the most practical thing, the most realistic solution is to recodify and readjust just compensation. How are people compensated? Because again, it's not just compensating you for the property that's taken, it's compensating you for the effects on your use and enjoyment of your property beyond that property that's taken.
And is there any model of compensation for that lost enjoyment of land under current law?
Well, under current law, yes. You can quantify by virtue of property value the impact on the value of the property. You would have to find like properties. You'd have to find, for example, Gary, if your property was affected by this trail and there's 40,000 people going through every day, you'd have to go out and find a property where there's 40,000 people coming through on the trail every day. And you'd have to look and see how that property's value was impacted before and after. And just the fact that who's going to want to live in a home right next to a bike trail. There are some people that will, but maybe not in this particular area, in this particular corridor. So yes, state law does compensate for those things right now. It's a pretty narrow view of just compensation.
So Gary, what's your next step? You say you want to work with the county, but are you gearing up for a larger grassroots movement? Are you thinking about a ballot initiative?
Our grassroots initiative is expanding every day. It's just amazing to me to see how many people are getting behind our cause and trying to bring awareness. We'd love to sit down with the Boulder County Commissioners and find a logical solution to this. We think one exists. If a bike trail must be built, we think we could help them with that process. But right now, it's kind of a disingenuous approach to us being involved in this. We read that it's public input, there's public comment on it, and it always goes back to 3 trails. We've been told there's a no trail option through this planning area, yet it's not on their surveys, it's not mentioned. 80 to 85% of the people that attended the open house June 23rd in Longmont were directly opposed to that. What came out in the paper from the transportation group was that there were people in opposition, but there's a silent majority that are for this. So we feel like we're being left out of the planning process. We think we have value to add, and we'd like to be part of the solution to try to find a better option that works for both the bikers and the owners of property throughout the valley. We think eminent domain is the wrong thing to do to put a recreational trail through.
And Bob, you talked about the pie in the sky idea, if you could define public use. But if, say, Gary was able to find a sympathetic legislator who said, okay, we're defining public use as not including any sort of transportation-related justification for mountain biking trails.
Right.
Would the Colorado legislature even be able to do that, given the Supreme Court decision? And are there any sort of federal mandates that would override the ability of the legislature to do that?
Well, certainly the legislature could identify and define what the term public use meant. It could limit public use, it could define the parameters for public use like it has with blight, etc. The term public use comes from our Constitution and from the U.S. Constitution. To define it would be a very tricky deed, and we've tried to do that in the past. In fact, with legislation in the last 4 to 5 years, there has been proposals where public use is attempted to be identified. It's just there are so many different interests that legitimately need eminent domain for true public uses. It's hard to identify every single one of those. For example, water. There's a great need to use eminent domain to bring water to places, to get water for the public, for the communities. But do you have to identify every single means of transporting water through pipes, through ditches, through you see the problem is if you don't identify it, some people will presume you intended to leave it out when you do define public use, and that causes a lot of problems.
So we've just got a couple minutes here. I wanted to, for those people who've seen you on this show before, get your take on sort of the health and the energy of the property rights movement in Colorado. Certainly it's been there in the past. As I mentioned, the largest all-volunteer signature collection drive. 40,000 Colorado voters signed up for eminent domain reform in 2006. Largest single-day crowd at the Capitol,
That's
I
right.
believe, was also in 2006, and
That's
it dealt with property rights. But it's been a couple years, and as we see, property rights is a type of issue where people really become interested when it's in their backyard. Now that the economy has slowed down, we're not seeing as many economic development, redevelopment projects.
That's right.
Is the movement healthy and active, or is it dormant?
I think it's healthy and active. I think there's a number of projects going on in the state of Colorado. Something like this happens in Boulder. You've got the Pinyon Canyon issue in southeastern Colorado. You've got folks that are still affected by eminent domain for urban renewal. And then you've got the Regional Transportation District. CDOT, there's lots of money for transportation projects. Those transportation projects, as we've talked about in this show before, are being used to be the base for urban redevelopment. So you're going to see a lot of that. And I think that when people are affected, they band together, and then there is a groundswell for property rights. But it's definitely could use some enthusiasm at this point in time. But there is definitely people out there that are interested, and like Gary, that get together in a civil, appropriate way and say, look,
Right.
we want to work with you. We want to do something here.
So Gary, just to let you finish up here, if you could say anything to those people who are kind of on the fence about whether or not they should support you, what would it be?
Well, I think people, it's easy to call people NIMBYs, and that's kind of a logical thing, but I think if you objectively pull back and say, I own private property that I work very hard for, I pay taxes on that property, I'm a good citizen, and how would it feel if a bike trail ran right across the front of my front yard with 40,000 people coming through there? I think you'd probably wake up and take a different opinion of what you think about eminent domain. And I would offer, Bob, you have a lot of supporters through the valley up in Boulder County now, and we'll be behind you.
So I want to give each of you one last chance to just tell people how they can contact you. Gary, if you want to go first.
We can be contacted through a website that we've set up called notrailalliance.com.
Okay.
And
Great.
so-
We will also make sure to pass on any inquiries we get at the Independence Institute. Our website is independenceinstitute.org. And Bob, how can people reach you?
My firm's website, mlh-law.com.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And certainly this is going to be an issue that heats up in the coming months and years. And to everyone out there tonight, thank you so much for watching. Property rights may not be the most exciting issue, but it is where our hearts are. Certainly our homes are our castles. We encourage everyone out there to become educated on the subject. Again, visit independenceinstitute.org and learn more about our Property Rights Project. Until next time, I'm Jessica Corry, in for John Caldera tonight. And thanks again for watching Independent Thinking. Have a good night.
You jibber-jab, bamboozle, nuka-noozle, bippity-bop-she-call. You jibber-jab, bamboozle, nuka-noozle, bippity-bop-she-call. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know where to turn it off.